As the Philippines continues to face the growing impact of climate change, building climate resilience is more critical than ever. To give us advice on how to be more climate resilient in 2025, we have via Zoom is a climatologist from the Institute of Environmental Science and Meteorology, Dr. Gerry Bagtasa. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, good morning, Paolo. Happy to be here.
Doc, let's talk first about the climate risks that we've faced over in 2024. A lot of people are going to be wondering, can we expect more intense incidents of them coming in 2025, especially with the amount of news made on how historically bad some of those climate incidents were in 2024?
Yeah, so 2025 will be a little bit different from 2024 since we are moving towards a neutral ENSO, or we don't have a, because right now we have a slight and we'll have a brief La Nina event because of the very cold waters of the Eastern Pacific. But for next year, we don't see those waters cooling, and we expect a little bit different from this year.
So for those who are going to be in particular the coastal areas or rural communities, how could they prepare better for any of the climate risks that we will encounter in 2025?
Yeah, of course, saying that it's a little bit different, but of course we're still expecting a lot of rainfall and tropical cyclones for 2025. And yeah, so for people living in coastal areas, which is a lot of people in the Philippines, the usual thing, listening to forecasts first of all, evacuating when it's needed. I think these are the things that are essential for coping with mitigating disasters from tropical cyclones or heavy rain.
Well, the national government has issued legislation that would actually push local government units to improve on their evacuation centers, have permanent facilities with regard to them, and to be able to weather things like extreme weather conditions and even earthquakes. How important are moves like that from the legislative level and from the LGU level to try and combat extreme weather conditions?
Yeah, so extreme weather conditions will always happen. So that's what we have to think about. And since it will always happen, the thing that we need to do is to move away from these extreme events. So evacuation is very important, but we see that most of the evacuation sites are just like basketball courts that are already there,
Yeah.
and schools and so on, that are not necessarily away from not away from those hazards. So they are also vulnerable. So yeah, so we need to really think about where to put this evacuation centers and so on. So essentially starting from the ground up, and hopefully it will mitigate future disasters.
Well, obviously, a lot of people would want to fight climate change, try and combat them. There are now initiatives for more sustainable agriculture and even water management in general. And of course, when you look at all of those factors, do you think that as early as now they could play a big role in terms of climate resilience in the Philippines?
Oh yeah, definitely. We are we People tend to think that climate change will happen in the future, but in fact, climate is already changing. So as it changes, as there are variations from year to year, then as early as now, doing things that will try to mitigate like agricultural disasters and so on would be really helpful.
We mentioned smart agriculture a while ago. It feels like farmers have to adapt a bit quicker than they normally have to, considering the changes in the planting seasons and even the harvesting seasons, and even having to harvest early due to extreme weather conditions. Just how important is being more climate smart for farmers in particular to help ensure food security and, of course, protect livelihood amid the changing weather patterns?
Yeah, so you mentioned, Paolo, that there's already a lot of things that are being done, but I think it's not enough. So if we look at neighboring countries, even those that are developing, like Thailand, there's a lot of smart agriculture that's happening there, and they're I believe quicker in terms of implementing this new technology. So Yeah, so I think it's really good that there's a lot of farmers that are already doing science-based planting and so on. But I think there's a lot more to do.
We talk about the urban part of it, and of course, urban areas in the Philippines trying to become more climate resilient by 2025. I know it's a very short time frame, a very quick turnaround, in particularly in terms of flood management and heat mitigation. Just how quickly do you feel they need to adapt to be ready for 2025?
Oh yeah, very very quick, and I think unfortunately there's no time to to prepare for 2025 in terms of as you mentioned, heat mitigation and flooding. So for flooding, it's been a perennial problem. There's a lot of solutions that are being brought to the government, but they tend to be very expensive. So there's a lot of it can't be done in a very short time. For heat mitigation, we expect that this coming few months, March, April, May, the hottest months of the year, it may be not as hot as 2024 for 2025, but still very hot, and there will be extreme days. And it's too soon. 3, 4 months from now, it's too short of a time to do anything about it. So I guess we just have to adapt to the conditions.
Doc, there are so many rules for Filipinos here, especially in the metro, when regard to go bags preparation, being ready for any extreme weather conditions, whether it be flood, whether it be earthquakes or any of the sort. Do you feel that the Filipino standards for preparation for these extreme weather events have to be raised slightly, considering how much more often that they've actually happened, and of course, in taking a more active role in reducing their own carbon footprint moving on?
Yeah, in terms of preparation, definitely being prepared will definitely lessen the impacts of these extreme weather hazards, whether it be tropical cyclones, monsoon rain, shear lines, and so on. But in terms of mitigating climate change by lessening our carbon emission, unfortunately, the carbon emission of the Philippines is so small that we can't really do anything about it. Even if we reduce our carbon footprint, doesn't really do much in terms of the overall emissions of the Philippines. So, yeah, it's more of it's not mitigation that we need to focus on, but rather it's not mitigation of the emissions, but rather the mitigation of the hazards
Yeah.
brought about by climate change. Yeah.
How can the private sector contribute to climate resilience in 2025? Because industries like tourism, agriculture, and even energy have had their own efforts to try and mitigate climate change and actually be better in climate resilience. In particular, we actually see the Philippines now developing what is supposed to be the largest solar farm in terms of storage and production here in the country, and trying to make that financially viable. How important is it for projects like that to be successful, to send more messages to fight climate change and promote climate resilience in 2025?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the emissions of the Philippines is so small that
Yeah.
even if we reduce it by a lot, doesn't really matter. But having wind farms, solar farms, it will we're also having difficulty in terms of filling the gaps in terms of energy use. So
Yeah.
having these solar farms, wind farms will definitely increase the energy resources that we have. That will be helpful for the economy. I think in that sense, that would be really good. But in terms of mitigating climate change, unfortunately, yeah, it's kind of difficult to say. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Gerry Bagtasa, for joining us. We really appreciate the insights and, of course, all of the frankness with your words. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Paolo.